Hi, everyone. I hope you all are having a wonderful Saturday and enjoying the workshops at the Family and Youth Summit. My name is Mary Beth Walsh. I'm the Director of Children and Youth Programs. I've been with everyone throughout the day, and I'm really excited about this next workshop on putting your lived experience to work. And on that note, I'm going to turn it on over to Jen Paul, who will be moderating today's panel. Take it away, Jen.
Hi, everybody. We're glad that you're here today. This is a brand new experience probably for most of us doing this, but we're gonna spend some time getting to know a few people in the workforce today. And I'm just gonna start by reading a little paragraph or a little summary kind of about who they are. And as I do that, can you wave your hand and say hello? We'll start with Rose. Rose Sutton is a mother of 2 adult children and 2 teens. She's also a wife of 24 years to a disabled veteran. She and several of her family members suffer from mental health conditions. They help each other out when they can. The 2 teens have other disabilities as well, ranging from autism to chronic pain syndrome. Rose has been with NAMI for about a year now. She is a Partners in Policymaking alumni, served on the Governor's Board from Interagency Community Commission, a peer mentor for Partners for People with Disabilities at VCU, and currently the director at the Autism Society of Northern Virginia. Okay, yay! So that's a lot of stuff. Did you wave? I didn't get to see it because I was reading. Good. So that's a lot of stuff that she's been doing, and some of it is the workforce paid and some of it is volunteer, but these are the things, sorts of things we're going to talk about today. And then we have Connie Nutter. I saw you. Yay. Okay, so Connie is a wife and mother and grandmother. She's a Virginia certified peer recovery support specialist and has worked in the field as a family support partner, trainer, supervisor, and entrepreneur. Since 2006, Connie has served in various capacities with the National Alliance on Mental Illness and was honored as a Virginia Family Network's 2013 Champion of Hope. Yay. Thank you. And then Rob is a foster and adoptive father of a sibling set of school-age boys. He and his wife met their eldest son about 10 years ago when he was 2 and met their youngest son 2 years later, just after his birth. Rob has been a family support partner for almost 3 years at UMFS and worked in other roles at UMFS prior to that. He is also a certified peer recovery specialist and is now using his CPRS and FSP, that's certified peer recovery specialist, and family support partner is FSP skills, along with his lived experience to help parents maintain their kids in their homes through a role with Child Protective Services, which is so awesome. Yay. Okay, so we're gonna start just by asking, let's see, which one should we start with? How did you start doing this work? Let's start with Connie. I call her the grandmama of family support partners in Virginia. She's one of the very first, and she's awesome. So let's hear you.
Hey guys, good to be with you today. I started thinking about this. I've always been in peer services ever since I was a teenager. But I got started with family support partner services through a friend of mine who I love dearly, and her name is Audrey Brown. And so that's how I got started.
Yay. So I forgot to say something just because I got ahead of myself a little bit. If you have questions that you want to ask the panelists, please put that in the Q&A box, and that's at the bottom of your screen. If you move your little mouse down there, it'll pop up and there'll be a Q&A and a chat box, and those are the 2 things you want to pop up. And if you have a question for the panelists, put it in the Q&A box. And if you have any other comments or things that you want to throw in to the dialogue because you're excited about something that someone said, please throw it in there. There's also a part where we're going to ask like what you do to take care of yourself, like to get through this stuff. And at that point, we would like you to share some of your experiences as well in the chat box. So how did you get started with this work, Rob?
I really kind of accidentally, I guess, probably like most of us that come into this work, I didn't realize it was really there until I was already sort of doing it. Before this, I'd been in sales for a number of years. When we met our kids, after the second one, we kind of felt like our home was too full to foster and or adopt more kids at that time because we were really busy with the 2 of them. But I still really wanted to be able to help other kids in my kids' situations. So that's where I found UMFS, and I started working with adopted families there. And then it was like, okay, well, what about, instead of helping foster kids or adopted kids, what about like helping to prevent kids from becoming foster kids? Because if you look at any of the research that's out there, it really shows you that, I don't think there's anybody in the world that could love their kids more than my wife and I love our two boys. But I also know that, there's a good chance their lives may still have been better if they could have gotten that love and support in their biological families. And if someone like me or like any of the other panelists would have been able to work with that family, then maybe that could have happened. So just kind of searching for that. I was lucky enough that UMFS happened to be starting a family support partner program about 3 years ago, and I was able to get involved with that. And it's really been great, because the skills that I've learned both at UMFS in the FSP role, and then more recently getting my CPRS, my Certified Peer Recovery Specialist. Those skills have really been fantastic to help me work with families, but also just to learn a ton about myself and my own family.
Yeah, I love that so much. I felt the same way where I started as a foster and adoptive mom, and now I'm a peer recovery specialist. I'm like on the other side of it, seeing what the parents have moved through in their life. And it's just so amazing. It's such an amazing experience. So Rose, how did you get started in this?
For myself, it was through the Advanced Parent Leadership class. And so I didn't even know what a peer recovery specialist even was when I started. And so I did that class, and then I started meeting other families that were similar to ours. And it just kind of went from there. I'm also a peer recovery specialist, but I'm working on the certification now to be able to do that. And I just noticed that it's just gave me more of a bit of an understanding of my own self and what's happening in my own home, as well as being able to help, when I do work with other families.
I love that. That's actually one of the main core principles or beliefs that we have. I think all of us are peer recovery specialists. Yeah. Is that we have a sense of reciprocity and mutuality, where we give, but we also get so much back by doing this work. It's amazing. So thank you so much for sharing that. So I have another question. And if any of the audience, please throw those questions in the Q&A, or if you have comments, or if anything has struck you as, put it in the chat box, because we like engagement. That's what we're about. We're about sharing and learning from each other. So please throw it in there. So the next question I want to ask, was there one thing or something that kind of lit the fire in you or inspired you to do this work? Like where you knew this was your home when this happened, or that you could find a home here. Yeah, so let's start with Rob. Do you want to start with that one? Like, how did you know, or what, was there something that?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, and I don't know if it's one moment or not, but really when my wife and I were going through our certification as foster parents, like just the negativity from a lot of the other folks that were in our shoes, as far as like directed towards the biological parents. And like, I think most people that aren't really involved in child welfare, they hear like the worst stories, and they just like assume that every kid that comes into foster care, was like brutally beaten by their parents. And the fact is, really most kids come in because of neglect, first off. And then secondly, like, it's really easy, if you think about it, in an area like Northern Virginia anyway, with the cost of living what it is, to see how kids can be neglected. It's not that biological parents don't love their kids, it's that they really can't provide for them and have them in daycare. And it's just really, it's difficult. And I think that a lot of people don't understand that. And even people that are foster parents, or even now I'm working in CPS, and some of the people that I work with like think that, geez, these parents are so horrible. And a lot of times that's not the case. They just don't know about the resources or have access to the resources. And if they did, then they'd be able to learn the skills to be great parents or good parents. And so knowing that, instead of just being one of these people on the sidelines is, oh, those people are horrible, somebody needs to take their kids away, being able to say, hey, what can we do to make the situation better, and being part of that solution is really, really great. And that's really kind of what sparked me and what really lit my fire for doing this work.
That is great. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. Connie, you want to go? I was going to say something, but it went out of my brain. Sorry. Go ahead, Connie.
Sure. Well, my journey started when I had a family member who had a mental health crisis, and I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know if what I was doing or saying was hurting or helping. And so I was introduced to the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And so I began serving with them on a volunteer basis for a while. And I think in all of my experience in all my life, they do peer stuff with excellence. So that's where I got my start. And then because I was so used to serving the community and for the crisis that my family went through, one of the hooks that drew me is there's a principle that NAMI has that says we will never give up hope. And I know when my family was in crisis, we could not see hope on the horizon. And so that made me want to search and how to help families navigate the system and not have to go through some of the throes that we did trying to find help. Later on, I heard about the peer specialist training, and I thought, well, this will be good for me to go serve my community. And so I went and this was before Virginia had their own certification. So I went, and little did I know, I was face to face with myself. All this ways of thinking that I thought I was the only one that thought that way, it kind of hit me rock solid. And so that was a whole week of trying to rediscover myself. And then I have a daughter who is now 27. And because of trying to navigate the system, the child care system is a whole different ball game as well. So that I felt like with that experience and having opportunity when High Fidelity Wraparound came along, you know, I was honored to take that training with Audrey and be some of the first family support partners in our area. And I had the idea of, you know, because I would go to my community about peer support services and they would say, oh, that's a great idea, but who's going to take responsibility and where's the money going to come from? So that's what initiated my entrepreneurial role. And I decided I was going to start my own for-profit business. And so I'm glad I did, because that opened up a whole other vein of service for me and experience for me. But basically mine was my family members, and then coming to a place of having a lifetime of caregiving to kind of put the skids on that and say, time out. It's time for me to work on myself and my recovery.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Be able to take that and to help, you know, it's so amazing how we go through maybe not the same circumstances, but we go through shared experiences and how that brings strength to each one of us.
Yeah, I love that. And then being able to take that and actually work in a professional role doing that, right? Mm-hmm. Making what we've moved through meaningful, you know, put it purpose to it. So there's a couple questions and Rose, I'll get to you in just a sec. There's a couple questions. One is there a difference between a certified peer recovery specialist and a peer recovery specialist? I'll talk about that later. That's a really good question. And Nicole Anjum shared that she tells people all the time to do this because no one should have to ride the struggle bus alone. And together we are so much stronger. And that is it. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So Rose, do you want to, what was the one thing that lit the fire or inspired you to do this work? Or was there one thing, or what was it?
For me, it was, I guess for myself, because my husband's a disabled vet and then I have the 2 teens who have mental issues, I was going to the thought process of, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to, you know, better cope with their, you know, with their concerns and their issues. And come to find out that the training was really learning more about myself and what I was going through. And so that training was really insightful, not, you know, to understand my own self. And Nicole, she had asked me when I first signed up for one of the courses, she says, well, we're going to teach you how to be able to help somebody in your community. And even though I was doing other things, I was like, she says, so what is your project going to be? And I'm like, what do you mean? And so that was kind of like, oh, you mean like I get to actually do this stuff with like other people, you know, and really give to somebody else in a different perspective. And it was just a nice refreshing. And every time I go through, when I was going through the training, it was just so nice to see that other people are going through the same thing. And usually you think of like a negative stipulation tied to mental health and what your status is. So this was a very nice, it was very empowering to hear that we can still be very productive in the work that we do, even if we have our own, concerns or mental health issues.
Perfect. Thank you. Not even if, because we have it.
Yes.
Amazing, right? So just some of the stuff that has been mentioned by all of y'all have been advanced parent leadership training, NAMI. What is this? You guys, hopefully you know a little bit about it because Virginia Family Network is housed under NAMI Virginia right now. And then high fidelity wraparound, and then peer recovery specialist training, all that. And we'll address that in the Q&A a little bit, or maybe we can do a little summary email sending it out depending on how this goes or plays out. But these are all like avenues into the workforce, right? Or parts of the workforce, parts of what we can do and learn. And another thing that kind of came out too is this desire to learn more. Like we want to know more and we want to help ourselves. And that's part of the drive in this work, is like trying to figure it out for ourselves and then being able to turn around and use that to support others. It's amazing. It's amazing. Like it gives, it's awesome. Anyway, so let's move on a little bit and I'll ask a question. And this one will probably be a little bit longer answers, and that's a good thing. What has been the most frustrating part of doing this work, of supporting others or supporting families in the community in a professional role? Let's see, let's start with Rose.
Yes, so some of the frustrating things is that I learned that if, there's so many people out there that need help. And once they finally come to me, they're usually to a point that it's like, okay, I really need this help. I've had it in, how are you going to help me? You're probably just another person who's going to say, I need, you're just another person that's going to just put me on a wait list or make me fill out a lot of paperwork. And so just being able to connect my own experiences. And that's, I think, what has made me successful in this role is that, having my own lived experience to be able to share a little bit about myself with someone else who might be going through it, and just taking their hand and just walking them through it. And some of the frustrating things could be, maybe if I don't have the answer right at that moment for that particular family. And so I have to, I usually will try to comfort at that moment. And then I'll say, well, okay, let me look into that. I'll get back to you. But, some of the things that I might see is language barriers. Sometimes, that may be an issue where we have a lot of resources, but like say, for instance, if you don't have internet, or if you don't have, the proper language, are these, how are we able to access them? And so sometimes it's just a matter of translating them or finding out who can translate the things for them. And so that's been kind of the frustrating piece. And the other big thing I would have to say is that I had to learn for myself that when I'm helping, I have to also maintain my own boundary, because of the fact that, sometimes we want to, when you're a person who wants to help other people so much, it gets so, you kind of get that spark. And then once you get going, you're like, oh, this is a great feeling. Let me just save the world. I always tell people. And what I had to learn for myself was, okay, wait a minute, put the brakes on. You got to set a limit so you don't, have that caregiver burnout. Because, if I'm caring for my family, caring for myself, and then caring for, all the families that come to me, yes, I want to help you. And yes, but I've also learned to maintain my own mental, boundary or status to be able to be more effective to those families that I do serve.
Perfect. I love that. So some of the barriers or struggles are, what I heard from you are language and boundaries and that sort of thing. So those are both really huge struggles, especially the boundary one that is universal. And the language is if you're working with a population that doesn't have access to services because of the language barriers, or maybe other communication barriers like hearing or sight, or something that interferes with that. And how do we get around that? Those are major challenges.
Right. And
So-
one more thing too, sorry, Jen, is, like sometimes you say, okay, well here, you can go to this location and they're gonna help you out. We can't get there. Oh, I guess, so I live in Northern Virginia, that I'm thinking, oh, everybody has access to like something, right? Someone can get us. So there have been points where it's kind of like, okay, if you're, sometimes I would just go and just drop stuff off, but not all the time. And so sometimes that can be frustrating is, for myself is like, if someone needs help and you're like, okay, well, just easy solution. But sometimes you really have to think out of the box and step back and say, okay, wait a minute, everybody does not have what you have or have access to those things. And so you have to really think outside the box. But yet that's also something that pushes me to continue learning about what others are doing across the state to find out, okay, well, I don't know all the answers, but this is what I do have. And if I don't know, then I, have no problem saying, okay, let me get back to you on that.
Yeah, I love that. Keep learning, keep connecting. It makes a difference. Yay. Wonderful. So Connie, why don't we go to you?
Okay. Well, as Rose was talking, I was reminded that sometimes it's frustrating to simplify the need and get system partners to realize that the type of work we do is more of standing beside someone and help them brainstorm what they have before them, or what natural supports, what family members, what friends, what neighbors they have to help them do the work themselves, because it's so easy to try to want to do things for others. Also, another frustrating thing as far as service could be, and I'm reminded of this because I'm in another state and I'm once again trying to navigate the system and learn it to get services. And that would be the system delivery and the time that it takes, because we are in crisis. We need those services now. And so often now could be 30, 60, 90 days. It could be a year, 2 years. And so those can be difficult. Another, coming from the standpoint of services, in my opinion, is the lack of cases. And how do we, as professionals, how are we enabled to take on more cases so that the people, organizations we work for, get finances and funding to see this worthwhile and to pay us. So that's been one. The other is culture. And when I think of culture, I think of family culture, but I'm also thinking of professional culture, and how important it is for us to role model a family support partner in that professional role, or to role model a peer recovery specialist to our peers in the workforce, so that they see that we are professionals as well. That can be challenging. And I think that's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you. I love that. So some of the things that our role, like do system partners, and that's a word probably that some people don't know either. System partners are people that we work with. So social workers, my brain is blanking, probation officers, teachers and social workers at the school, case managers through the CSB, Community Services Board. There's so many words that are maybe new to some people. Anyway, so having them understand what we do, like we're not a fixer, we don't do it for them, but we walk with them as they move through whatever experience they're going through. And then it takes so much time to get services in place, and that can be frustrating. And then how can we do more? Can they identify more families that need us, or can we do more work in the community? And then what's the culture? Are we professional? And it'd be nice to get paid decently, which we're working on, right? But that's good, like professionalizing the role. And it is like an emerging workforce, right? So it isn't something that exists out there that you can step easily into. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of you have to tolerate a lot of role ambiguity. What do we do? How do we do this? Are we doing it right? We don't know. And sometimes you learn you're not doing it right by making mistakes, and then you have to go back and relearn. So those are great. Oh, go ahead, Connie.
One more thing about that. We are on the cusp of this new role, and just that alone in what you said, I mean, we might have to come up with our own templates, and nobody's ever stepped in that role before. So we're the forerunners in that role. And that can be very difficult for some of us. We may not be ready to step in that profession yet until there's a more, more of a paved road. Who knows?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you. So Rob, what are some of the frustrations what has been the most frustrating part of this work, or you have found to be frustrating?
I think, especially when I started, I'm going to echo a lot of what Rose and Connie said, and I'll try and say it differently and then have you guys think, oh, wow, those were some brilliant ideas that he had. So the biggest problem, I think, for me, or the biggest frustration that I had, especially when I started, was that I didn't know really what I was doing, and I didn't have anybody supervising me at UMFS to really help, because and that's because it's kind of a newer role, and it's a newer position, and so not having a supervisor really made it difficult on the one hand, but on the other hand, it was really great because it gave me and Jen, I think it was you and I that started at UMFS, like kind of the chance to sort of define what the role was. So that was pretty cool, because that really gave us the opportunity to say, oh, well, what do we want this position to be? I think that the system itself has definitely created some frustrating challenges. I think that definitely, I want to echo, like, the system partners, a lot of times, I think that they view us as somebody that can tell the family what to do. And that's not our role. So making sure that the partners that we work with, whether it's, social workers, either county social workers or school social workers, or therapists or whoever, like, it's not our job to tell the families what to do. It's our job to share our experiences with the families to hopefully help them make better decisions, or make different decisions, or more informed decisions, have some information, have a little more information, have better access to resources. But really, I think that the biggest advantage that me and anybody else in this role has for families is when we share our mistakes, not the things that worked well for us. When we're able to say, hey, this is what I did, and it was like banging our heads against the wall for 6 months or 9 months or 12 months, so that hopefully they can avoid wasting 6 months or 9 months or 12 months doing that. Or, just whatever we have. I mean, it's really them learning from our experience. It's not for us to say, this is what you need to do, or this is what you should do, because there's 8 other people on the team to tell them what they should do. It's our role to be the person that says, well, I know all these other professionals are giving you all these ideas. What do you think the best idea is? And these are the things that these are the things that my family tried. This worked for us and this didn't. Maybe it's going to be opposite for you. Maybe the thing that didn't work for me is going to work for you. And maybe the thing that worked for me isn't going to work for you. But this is what we did. And this is, why we made that decision. And getting our system partners to understand that that's really our role, is to share our experience, and that, we're equals with the peers that we're working with, and we're not going to tell them what to do. And that's really what makes our role different and unique. And so I think valuable, because when we're able to really connect well with the families that we work with, they are more open to listening to us, and they value our experience more than, the professional that they're sitting across the table from that hasn't walked in their shoes.
Yeah, I love that. So a few of the frustrating, sorry, I hear a dog. The frustrations are like the system partners, again, trying to understand us, and then helping the parents understand, make more informed choices. I like that. Thank you. I just want to read a couple comments that people have been making. Kelly says, you guys are doing great. Way to go, panelists. Sonia says, your passion supports your purpose, and finding those supports is key. You are appreciated for your efforts. That's so good. That's awesome. And then Saida says, off what Connie said, how can you work with more peers and families through multiple sources that offer funding sources? And if they do have the funding, the identification they use for the same position and work, what require more formal education and experience? So those are good questions that we will address a little bit later. And Keisha says, love having that flexibility to meet the family's needs. It's so great. And Rob, I will like second and third that, I did want to mention, UMFS has had a grant through most of the state where they've been able to fund and have the supervisory structure through Christy Corbin, yay, where she's been able to lead and guide it and develop the workforce. In Northern Virginia, UMFS did not have the grant, and so we were doing a different type of programming where we were doing fee for service, and so we didn't have that structure of the supervisor. Our supervisor led us the best she could, but she doesn't really understand, this is my perspective completely, but may not totally understand what the needs of our workforce was. And so I felt like we didn't get developed the way we needed to, but then came other resources in the state, which was great because we were able to access like the peer recovery specialist training and things like that. And then networking through like Virginia Family Network also helped support us in our development as professionals and our networking, connecting with each other. It's fantastic. And then another one, yes, so another one about there being a registered peer recovery specialist and needing a supervisor is also a comment or a question. So these are great. We love this input from you guys. Did any of you want to bounce off what someone else said? Is there something that someone said that you're like, you really wanted to say something? Okay, no worries. No worries. We'll go on to the next
Actually,
question.
I do have one. I did want to say, and Jen, I think you and I have talked a little bit about this, just, and this kind of echoes what Connie was talking about with developing more opportunities and more cases. I mean, there are so many different ways that FSPs or peers could be utilized around the state. And I think, unfortunately, really, high fidelity RAP is the only model for family support partners in Northern Virginia anyway that's really being utilized for FSPs. But at the same time, I think certified peers and peers in general, peer recovery is getting much more prevalent up here. I know working with CPS, we have somebody working with the father engagement unit that I just engaged this week to work with a family that I'm working with through that. And I see more and more jobs coming open at the CSB or at Fairfax County or City of Alexandria for peers, which is awesome because I think that eventually it is going to expand to FSPs. If you look at research, it shows that peers really do have a huge impact on people. And then for our partners, it's usually a more cost-effective treatment or whatever modality that for whoever is paying for it. So it's like you get better results at a lower price. Like who doesn't want to sign up for that if they're the person paying for it, right? So I think that we are going to see more and more opportunities, but I think it's part of our responsibility to kind of look at where can we help too. So like, schools, like, wouldn't it be great if there was a family support partner in every school in, Fairfax County or in the Commonwealth of Virginia or in the United States of America? Why aren't they? I don't know. Nobody's been able to come up with a workable idea yet, but I think that would be great because I know I would love that if I could, whatever problems I'm having with my kids, if there was somebody that had some sort of lived experience at the school that I could go talk to, I would love it. And I think that there's lots of parents out there that would love that. So it's like, I think part of it is our responsibility as the first wave of this in Virginia to make those things happen. So, and I think it's cool too, because we're allowed to brainstorm that kind of stuff. Or, I don't know, maybe every police department should have a family support partner available, whatever it might be. But I think I think we have to point out to people where the need is, just like we have to educate the rest of the workforce on what it is that we do and why we're so effective with families. We need to show, people higher up at the system level why they need family support partners all over the place and not just working with high fidelity RAP.
Definitely. Rose,
Coming off of that also, Jen.
yep, good.
And I wanted to say too, I'll piggyback off what Rob was saying was that, like I said, when I first started, I didn't even know what it was. I was just kind of doing it anyways, really is what it was. But when I volunteered, I was like, oh, I'm not really putting money into additional training. I actually get to test it before I actually go in there and I, try to start saving the world. I get to practice. I get to put it in practice of, peer support and what it really is and just being able to do it here and, whether I want to go do it for, to whatever extreme. I can do it here. I know, at least know with my county and other counties. And you can kind of use these things, like Rob said, to educate others. We advocate a lot of times for our families and for ourselves, that it's kind of like, this is a whole new thing that it's like, oh, wow, you mean we can do that and we can actually get paid to do that. And before you go into a role that you're not even sure, you can actually test the waters and take a training and ease into it. And I think that that's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I wanted to piggyback off something you said, Rob, but it left my brain, so it's gone for the moment. There was a question by Keisha, is there a great deal of overlap between FSP and PRS? So I just want to answer that really quick right now. What I found as an FSP, it's a role in the workforce with parents with kids under the age of 18. And it's a specific role that fits a certain way of delivering services or support to families. And the PRS, the peer recovery specialist training, I think filled in the gaps for me. It taught me the skills that I wasn't learning from my supervision, that I wasn't learning in doing the work. I was like learning by accident or by screwing something up. And I think Rob said earlier, like, that's the greatest learning tool, is screwing up, right? That is, when I teach or facilitate any course, I share those experiences where I messed up or where things blew up in my face, because those are the most powerful lived experiences where you can connect with people. But I don't know if I answered your question or not. So like peer recovery specialist training is like getting the skills that you need to do the work in a professional, in a way that does no harm. That's one of Connie's terms from NAMI. Do no harm, because you want to support people without hurting them or doing something by accident that may interfere with their own recovery path, which is terminology from the peer recovery specialist work. And another comment I wanted to make, I remembered it, Rob, it just came to my brain, is as a peer recovery specialist, because I've been kind of immersing myself in that world of peer recovery specialists, and I see so much potential there for people, adults who have mental health challenges or substance use challenges, and their families, what they're moving through the chaos of their loved ones, addiction or illness. Like, we could be there too, not just with kids under the age of 18, but adult families and stuff. So I see like this vision of like, oh my gosh, we can take over the world, which is amazing. Anyway, sorry, that was I digressed. Is that the right word? I digress. Yes. Okay. So another question I want to ask real quick, and that's good. All right. I'll ask is, what has been the most rewarding part of doing this work? What have you gained the most out of it? Let's start with Rob. You want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the most rewarding part is, when you're able to, anytime we're able to work with families and really affect a positive change. I mean, when you look at where a family was a year ago and where they are, 12 months later or 18 months later, or, if you're lucky enough, the longer you're in this, to be able to call a family that you worked with, years ago, or run into them or whatever, and see that they're doing well. And if having them tell you, hey, you know what, you had a positive effect on me. I mean, that's why we get into this, is to help families and to help kids and help families and help people. And so when we're actually able to do that, there's nothing in the world better than that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thanks for letting me go first and taking the obvious easy one.
So Connie, what has been the most rewarding part for you doing this work?
It kind of goes along with what Rob said, seeing individuals and families flourish. I think of my first work as a family support partner with a mom who lost custody of all of her kids. And here we are several years later, and I see a picture of her with all 4 of her kids surrounding her and kissing on the cheeks for Mother's Day. She has flourished, she's remarried, she's in the profession, and she has her kids around her. It's just so beautiful. Another early case I had, I remember the mom saying to me, basically the family support partner role that I was in, I she was able to confide in me, and only one other person, and that was her daughter's counselor. And we were the only two safe people at the time, she felt. I thought that that was a great honor to be able to listen to someone with empathy and to validate them goes a long way. And then another role that I had was working with a mom who was on the verge of losing custody of both of her kids. And she was able to get her kids some help and also invited me to her wedding. So those are special endearments to me.
That's really cool. Thank you. Rose, what have you found to be the most rewarding part of this work?
So since you all took the the reason why we get in here, so for me, I think it is, you know, when you first see that glimmer of hope in the family's eyes, that, you know, they're in a negative place at first and they're really struggling. And then, you know, you may have said something and you don't even realize you said it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, wow. And then you see them on that road to recovery. That has been the most rewarding, is for that connection, that someone trusted me enough to just hear what I had to say, tried it their own way. And I try to make sure that I give more than one option of things, and just kind of just brainstorming, like, you know, like the others had said, is that we're really just there to talk with them and say, you know, we are here, we can, you know, we're going to try our best to help you, and you are safe with us. And to tell somebody that, and for them to finally trust you, I think that is usually one of the most rewarding things for me, because I feel like, okay, I finally, you know, have been able to reach somebody, and then eventually you see them grow on their own.
Yeah, I love that so much. So to see the growth and the change, to see them flourishing, and it's a great honor to be part of that process of change in their lives as they discover their worth and value as a person, because sometimes they're missing that. And then to bring hope when you see that hope light up in their face. And I think for me, I'm thinking of one parent in particular, is the change in her, where in the beginning she was so frustrated with system partners. All she did was complain and talk about all the horrible things that had happened to her. And, you know, I was able to, like, it literally took months of her doing this, and then finally she was able to hear something different. But it took her that long to just get that out of her system, because she had had so many negative experiences with system partners and the system doing stuff with her. And it got to the point where I could start talking about there are limitations in the system, and, you know, the people who are making these choices are doing it because that's what they're told to do. It's not necessarily because they're bad people. And so, like, part of our role is to be that bridge between system partners and the families that we're supporting, and to help them see, like, these are people up here who have these constraints on them. They want to help you, they want to give you what you need, but they can't, you know, because the system doesn't let them, or the funding isn't available, or whatever it is, to just bridge that gap, and then help the system partners see what the families are going through. Like, they're just people in crisis. They're, you know, you're seeing them at their worst. You know, that is not all that they are. And I often would say, I remember saying it, is like, you know, 3 years ago, I was on the floor just like her. I was in a heap, in a mess, wondering how I'm going to function, get through this day, you know, and for them to look at me now as, oh, wow, Jen, right? But I went through that. I was in the middle of that, and to, like, put up, this is the after, right? This is what we can become once we move through our crisis. So that, for me, is my woo, great.
Yeah, can I just piggyback on that real quick? I think, because I think that really is like the FSP or the peer recovery specialist. That really is like the skill set. And I know they teach classes on it, right? It's for in social worker psychology, it's called motivational interviewing. In sales, it's called consultative selling. I mean, what it really is like listening to someone. And that's what our families need, is somebody that listens to them, that isn't just waiting to talk, but is actually listening to what they have to say. And Jen, that's exactly what you did for that family. Like, no matter how many months it took, you were willing to listen. And then when when the family was comfortable with you and felt like they actually had somebody listening to them, then they were able to listen to you. And that's really the difference that we make in their lives, because a lot of times we're the only person
Yep.
on the team that is willing to listen to them, that really is listening, because people all the time will tell you what they need. It's just a matter of somebody there that's willing to listen and say, oh, aha. So, the problem isn't, sometimes what professionals think it is. Sometimes it's something completely different that's getting in the way, and people will tell you. You just have to be willing to listen.
Yep. The hardest part is holding your tongue and just waiting for the right moment, because you can see, right away you can see things, but you just gotta wait. You gotta wait till the right moment. It's hard, but it's also amazing when you get that right moment, when you're finally ready to share or to say what you've been wanting to say for months. You can finally have that opportunity to share it with them, and that's when the miracle happens. That when the hope comes on, and it's just amazing. So I just wanted to go over to the Q. Connie, did you have something? You looked okay. You just kind of looked. You're shifting a little. I'm very much a mover, and I can't sit still. I get nervous. I have anxiety, right? Yeah. Okay. So a question we have over here is, how are you signed to or referred to a family? Do parents welcome your participation? If not, how do you establish a relationship? Those are really fantastic questions. Let's answer that one. Why don't we throw that out there? I'll address the assignment thing. The assignment or referral depends on the agency, how you get assigned or referred. And then, so what do they welcome you, and what if they don't? Connie?
First thing that comes to me is peer support doesn't work unless it's voluntary. And sometimes there might be certain cases where it's been thrust upon them that they have to have the service, and letting them know that, no, this is an option is very important and empowering in itself. Also, just being real and sharing my own story and where I come from, sometimes it kind of brings down that facade that a person has, because that person has been broken and hurt so many times. A lot of times when we let down our facade and we're just real, that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, I can remember a parent that I supported once who the first time I met her, she goes, don't take this wrong, but I just don't want to waste my time on you. I have to in order to get services for my son. I'm so sick of this. I don't want to do anything. I was like, okay. And I just listened to her, and I was like, well, can I come back next week? And she goes, yes. And so I brought a form that she had to fill out to get services. And I said that, this is something you need to fill out in order to get funding. And she wrote on it, F you, except the bad word, the whole word, right? F you. And push it back to me. And I said, okay, this is cool. I said, I'll bring like several copies next time, so you can write that as many times as you need to until you're ready to move through this. And if you aren't, that's fine too. Can I come back next week? And she said yes. But it's that sort of thing where you just understand from their perspective that they have been kind of hurt or burned or had really difficult experiences working with the system. And that's what you are representing to them initially. That's all they see is like another person they want to send into my house. Are you kidding me? And that it's not always that way, but it can be that way. So, did either of you anybody else comments, or we can move on to another question. Okay, it's popping around a little bit. Have you ever had experience where someone you worked with decided to become a PRS or FSP themselves? And I think, Connie, you had shared a little bit about that, where one of the families or the people that you supported ended up becoming a family support partner in the end or afterwards.
Happens many times, right, Rose?
Yes. Do you get the chance to advocate for parents who are involved in the child welfare system? Have you changed the direction a case was taking? Rob, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially in the FSP role, I mean, a lot of times, we are able to, one of the big things that High Fidelity RAP is really designed to do is to keep kids in the family setting, in the community, instead of having to go to a residential treatment. And I mean, there's many times when I first started working with a family, like the family is just done and they're checked out and they're like, I got to get this kid into residential. And, you know, we've been able to, and not just because of the FSP program, but because of high fidelity RAP also be able to maintain that kid in the community. And I mean, kids, as long as kids can be safe and healthy, they are so much better off not having to go to an RTC. So anytime, I mean, like that, you know, talking about like the most rewarding things about this job or whatever, I mean, that's a hugely rewarding thing when a family feels like they need to have their child go to RTC or be out of the home and they end up not having to go out of the home and things work out. I mean, that's huge. So yeah, I mean, I feel like we definitely are able to change the direction of cases oftentimes as far as getting involved in child welfare. I mean, I think now with my role at CPS, I look at, you know, it's not one of my duties, but I think that it's really important for me to, you know, model to my coworkers at CPS and teach and educate them on really what it's like to have kids with special needs in their homes, and so that there is a little bit more understanding of the challenges that a lot of the families that we're working with and that we're trying to prevent out of home placements into the foster care system, kind of what they're going through and how the kids may benefit from, instead of them being removed and put into foster care, by putting resources into place for the families. So what can we do to help this family be a stronger family, instead of what can we do to get this kid out of this family?
Perfect.
I think I'd just like to say, and I think that that's important. The high fidelity wraparound model through the Office of Children's Services is vitally important. That you've got a whole intensive care coordination team working together to make sure that everyone's hearing what the family, the child, the parent is saying their needs are. I know that there are mandated needs for different system partners sometimes, like juvenile justice or whatever, but a lot of times it's just simply like, my kid's coming home and I don't have a bed for them to sleep in. And so you're brainstorming with the family, how can mom get a bed for your child? It can be that simple to begin to initiate change, and for the system partners to see that needs don't always equal services.
Perfect. Thank you. And Nicole shared the best part is when the family has their aha moment, or to hear them say, take a breath and remember the tips that Miss Nicole gave us to talk to each other better. And so to see them actually using the things that you've shared with them, it's really awesome. And I have a question that I want to ask next. So, but I'm going to first go to explaining the difference between a CPRS and a PRS, a certified peer recovery specialist and a peer recovery specialist. So a peer recovery specialist is somebody who has taken the 72-hour training through the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services, DBHDS. So they've taken that 72-hour training, but they have not yet had the hours that they need, the hours of experience, or taken the exam to pass to become a certified peer recovery specialist. So certified means you have at least 500 hours of work in the field and 25 hours of supervision, direct supervision, which means developing you as a workforce, the skills in you, those sorts of things. And then you have to take an exam or a test, and that's how you become certified. So I hope that answered the question well. I know there were some other terms that I don't necessarily want to go into. We mentioned high fidelity wraparound again. That could be an entire 3-day, week-long course. Office of Recovery Services has a summary of it. There's videos out by UMFS describing what it is, like a 20-minute video, and then just specifically what the family support partners role in that model or that way of delivering services. That exists as well. But this is the question that I want to ask, I think is wonderful. It's from Penny. And it's, could you talk a little bit about triggers if or when a scenario hits so close to home that you get emotional or feel it too personally, where it's just a little bit too close to your lived experience, or maybe a part that you haven't processed all the way, or even if you have processed it, it just hits you. Would anyone like to talk on that one? Share on that one?
I definitely will. I had a family that I was working with who had two adopted sons, and they were the same age difference between my kids, but they were a little bit older, and we're having some really big struggles. And I saw a lot personality wise between their older son and my older son, and their younger son and my younger son, and also a lot personally between the father that I was working pretty closely with, and the wife was very similar to my wife. And so it was really eerie, and it really was difficult for me because they were, things were not great. And in fact, the younger son ended up being hospitalized in an RTC, and that was really, really difficult for the family. The biggest thing for me, honestly, was like being able to recognize that, and then also having coworkers like Jen and a couple others that I was able to talk to. But then also just being able to talk to my wife and come home and sit on our back porch and, have a glass of wine together, and me be able to kind of talk with her. So whatever is, it is hugely important to understand what your own triggers are and to be able to identify them, because this is really emotional and really hard, difficult work that we do. And if you let it get all bottled up inside you, then you're probably not going to be able to do this for the long haul. You might do this really well for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, but you're not going to be able to do this for 10 years if you let all of this get bottled up. You have to have some sort of release. And so I'm really lucky. My wife's amazing. She's a social worker too in a medical setting. And so I feel really comfortable sitting down and being able to talk to her, but just finding somebody that you can talk to. As good as she is, I also do see a therapist that helps me process some things too. And I try and get some exercise and get things out that way too. So I think just definitely being able to take care of yourself is huge, and understand what you're about. And it's a great question, Penny. Thank you for it.
I think the importance of being self-aware, and it sounds like you already have a good start as well. I just am reminded that I decided to come to a place in my own recovery where I went to see a child trauma therapist, and what I would think none of us want to happen is what I had projected on my kids, and that was I was serving the little girl in me, and that was reflecting on my kids and how I raised my kids growing up. And I just say that to kind of say that's definitely what we don't want to do, is try to mistake the needs that we might have had in that situation for the needs that someone else has.
Wonderful.
For myself, I found myself having to assist a family that was, so the girl was leaving her boyfriend at the time, and she was a younger mom who had a couple kids, and he was threatening to take the children away. And so she didn't really have anywhere to go. And so, so we talked a little bit, and what was happening was that she was about to be homeless with the children. And so myself, I'm also, a teen mom who ended up being homeless, with my younger, well, now my older two kids. And so that was really hard. And it actually caught me off guard, because it's something that I had already thought it was like, the old saying is, it's over, it's done, you should be fine by now, right? That's a lot of times what we hear is that, it happened a long time ago, you should be good. And so I actually did end up crying with her for a few minutes. And then I had to realize that, okay, pick yourself up, and then I said, so I do get it, because she was like, well, you're just saying that like everybody else does it. That's what you're supposed to say. That's what you're trying to say. And so I told her a little bit about what had happened. And I said, I do get it. I said, I do get it. I said, I don't understand your exactly what you're going through. I said, but yes, I have been there. I said, but now we need to figure out, how are we going to get you out of this? I said, let's think a little bit of where you could go. And so I helped her process how to get out of that situation. And, we were able to figure out that someone that she didn't even think was going to be able to take her in, took her in. So sometimes it's just that processing, but, that's not something that I try to do regularly, but that raw emotion sometimes might catch you off guard.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think,
I know we're done on time, but just being real with that person, if you're having a hard day getting through that, just say, can we talk again another day? might be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's the power of lived experience, is that it does tap into those places that are tender, or the difficult challenges that we've moved through in our own personal life. That's what makes us so powerful in the workforce and in supporting other people. But it also puts us at risk. So we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves and aware of our triggers. I love that. Just being what does it feel like when I'm being triggered? Oh, it's like, well, I need to step back a little here, or move forward. But to make sure you have the people around you to help process it and stuff. We are limited on time. We're at time. But I just wanted to close out by thanking all of you for your comments, and thank you for the participation in the chat box and in the question and answer thing. And I wanted to quickly go back to what Saida was saying about funding for this work in the workforce. So we have the High Fidelity Wraparound, which is funded through Office of Children's Services. But there's also another route that is emerging right now. Virginia has this program called STEP Virginia, where it's like they're trying to transform the way mental health services are delivered in the state. And part of those steps, it's like one step will do this, the next step will do this. And in there is a requirement or a strongly worded suggestion that CSBs across the state have peer recovery specialists and family support partner services available at their CSB. And that is in line to go into effect, I think, in July 2021. There's been a lot of delay in that implementation because it's taking longer to get the lower steps. But so in the future, it's going to be here. It's just taking time. We have Medicaid funding stream available. It's a very low reimbursement rate right now, which will hopefully increase over the next few years. But we're like at the very beginning of this professional workforce. Did someone want to say something? Oh, I thought I'm hearing voices. Sorry, I heard something. I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so thank you. Some of the comments we have is thank you. You did an amazing job. We have a 5-minute warning. I don't know when that came up. So I don't know if we're late or not. I just want to finish with all of you sharing something, like one last comment, either about this work, the future of the work, or what you have learned from it. How has it changed you? How has it impacted you doing this work? And then we'll wrap up. We're going a little bit over time, but start with Connie.
Okay. Well, I've become less judgmental. And it means a lot to me to learn that everybody has to be somewhere. And when we allow each other to be where we are, that's okay. Whatever emotions we go through, that's okay. Validation, learning the importance of validating and listening effectively and attentively. And ultimately, all the skill sets that I've learned has benefited my family the most. And that's where I needed it the most.
Beautiful. Rose?
Yes, so for myself, just being able to help other families and, and meeting them where they are, meeting people where they are, and sometimes allowing just that emotion just to filter through and be more thinking out of the box. And then, if I've had a situation that's a little bit tough, to be able to reach out to a peer, another peer in the workforce, to be able to just regroup my own self. But yes, it's been wonderful.
Thank you. And Rob?
I think that this is a really awesome role to be in. All the attendees, that if you guys are trying to figure out like, hey, can I do this? Then, if you're thinking about it, if you're contemplating it, then the answer is yes, you can, because it really is just about like taking your own lived experience and putting it to work. You don't need any, particular skill set or any special skills. I mean, there's all kinds of different backgrounds for doing this and doing it well. And you just really have to like people and want people's lives to be better. And I think probably if you're on here listening to the four of us talk, you probably do want people's lives to be better. So, and it really is awesome. And people are like, oh, it's great that you do that. You're a really selfless person. Honestly, it's the most selfish thing I've ever done, because I constantly learn from the families that I'm working with, and somebody puts money in my bank account to do it. It's really great. So I really encourage you to look into figuring out how you can help people as a career, help families that need it as a career, and use your own expertise. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you don't have expertise, because you do. Whatever it is that you did to get here, whatever you had to go through with your family to get here, that is your expertise, and it's more valuable than whatever you can learn in a university classroom. Or don't worry about not having a master's or a PhD behind your name. Your life is your PhD.
Yeah. I love this. And just thank you guys for joining in with this. I hope that we entertained you a little bit and that you learned from our lived experience, because that's what this is all about, is to learn from each other. And thank you for joining in.